The signal cut in and out like a dying pulse. Ren Vasic hunched over the nav console of the Cathara and watched the border marker blink its last warning, a stuttering red glyph that every smuggler in the outer reach knew by heart. She had 14 hours of fuel. Behind her, 3 Vethani intercept frigates held formation at the edge of scanner range, close enough to taste her engine wash, far enough to pretend they were not hunting. She keyed the recorder. Habit. Every run, every border, every close call she logged it, not for posterity, for evidence. If they caught her, the log was leverage. If they killed her, the log was a ghost that would haunt their tribunal feeds for decades. Cathara Supplemental, Day 147 of the Dremery Transit Contract. I am approaching the Vethani exclusion perimeter at coordinates I will not name because 3 warships are listening to every frequency I own. Fuel status, 14 hours. Cargo status, intact. Crew status, 1. Plan status, none. She killed the mic. The console hummed. Ahead the void changed not in color, not in light, but in density. The stars thinned. She had heard old pilots talk about it in the port bars on Kessivar, the way they lowered their voices when they described the edge of human space. Not the edge of a territory. The edge of something the galaxy had agreed to forget. Ren did not believe in legends. She believed in fuel, mass ratios, and the reliable cowardice of customs officers who would not chase a smuggler past a certain line. That line was 3 hours ahead. The Vethani would not cross it. No one crossed it. That was the plan. The Cathara was a Dremery-built light hauler, 60 years old, held together by bypass cables and Ren's refusal to acknowledge structural warnings. She had stolen it from a boneyard on Sethai's Minor when she was 22, rebuilt it across 4 years of contraband runs through the Tessic Straits, and named it after a word in the old Korvathi tongue that meant, the thing you keep when everything else is taken. She was not sentimental about it. She was practical. The ship was fast, quiet, and ugly enough that port authorities rarely bothered scanning it twice. The first ping from the Vethani came 11 hours and 40 minutes before her fuel ran dry. Unregistered vessel Cathara. You are entering a restricted navigation zone. Reverse course immediately or you will be classified as hostile. Ren did not respond. She adjusted her heading 2 degrees starboard, trimming her profile against the background radiation of a dead brown dwarf. The Cathara's stealth package was a joke, a repurposed civilian dampener bolted to the hull with industrial adhesive, but in the right conditions against the right backdrop, it bought minutes. Minutes were currency out here. She keyed the recorder again. Cathara Supplemental, hour 1140. The Vethani are pinging on standard enforcement frequencies. 3 frigates, Orsha-class, probably out of the Tessic garrison. They know I am heading for the line. They are not accelerating. That tells me everything. She paused, looked at the border marker on her scope. It was the last one. After it, the charts went gray, not blank, not redacted, just gray. As if the cartographers had started to draw something and then put down their instruments and walked away. Ren had been a smuggler for 19 years. She had run contraband through the Dremery Straits when the Tessic Compact was still enforcing its embargo. She had moved refugees out of the Korvathi purge zones when the transit corridors were mined. She had once flown a medical shipment through a Vethani blockade by disguising her hauler as a waste barge and dumping actual waste on the customs frigate that tried to board her. She was not easily frightened. But the gray on the charts bothered her. It was not the absence of data. It was the presence of a decision. Someone had looked at that region of space and decided that the appropriate response was to stop recording, not to warn, not to mark it dangerous, just to stop, as if the act of naming it would make it real. She knew what was out there. Everyone knew. The word was never spoken in official channels, never printed in navigation guides, never acknowledged in any Galactic Transit Authority publication she had ever read. But every pilot, every dock worker, Every fuel station attendant from Kessavar to the rim of the Tessic Reach knew the word. Human. The species the galaxy had decided did not exist. Not because they were gone. The readings, when anyone was foolish enough to take them, showed activity, energy signatures, mass concentrations that suggested cities and stations, and infrastructure on a scale that made the Dremery core worlds look like outposts. They existed. They were there. The galaxy simply chose not to see them, the way a child chooses not to look under the bed. Ren had heard the stories. Every smuggler had. The fleet that crossed the line during the Korvathi expansion and never sent a signal back. The Vethani survey ship that drifted out of the gray zone 40 years later with its crew alive but unable to speak, not injured, not drugged, just silent, as if they had seen something that had emptied them of language. The Dremery diplomatic mission that was returned to its home port in perfect condition, every crew member accounted for, every system functional with a single addition. A data crystal containing a complete map of every Dremery military installation, supply line and classified research facility, accurate to within 3 meters. No message, no threat, just the map. The Dremery had not sent another ship. Ren did not need to believe the stories. She needed the Vethani to believe them. The second ping came at hour 10, sharper now, the automated warmth stripped from the voice. Unregistered vessel Kethara, you are now inside the restricted navigation buffer. This is your final warning. Reverse course or we will fire. She keyed the mic. Vethani enforcement, this is the Kethara. I am a licensed Dremery freight operator carrying medical supplies under Tessic Compact Humanitarian Exemption Code 773. You have no jurisdiction to fire on a humanitarian vessel. A pause. Then a different voice, not the automated enforcement channel but a real officer, his vocal harmonics carrying the tight, clipped resonance of a Vethani who had been awake too long. Kethara, we both know you are not carrying medical supplies. We have been tracking your cargo signature for 6 days. You are carrying unregistered Korvathi cultural artifacts in violation of 14 transit statutes. Reverse course. You will be processed at the Tessic garrison. This does not need to end with gunfire. Ren leaned back in her seat. The chair creaked. The Kethara's bridge was small enough that she could touch both walls with her arms outstretched, a cockpit, not a command center. Through the forward viewport, the stars were thinning. The gray zone was less than 2 hours ahead at her current burn. With respect, Commander, you have been chasing me for 6 days through 3 transit corridors and you have not fired once. If you were going to shoot, you would have done it at the Tessic Junction when I was in range and in your jurisdiction. You did not. You followed me here instead, which tells me this is not about the cargo. Silence on the channel. She could picture the Vethani commander on his bridge, the tall, angular frame, the gray-blue skin pulled tight over cheekbones that looked like they had been cut from stone. The Vethani were a proud species. They did not enjoy being read. You want to know what I know, she said. You want to know why I would fly toward the one place in this galaxy that everyone agrees does not exist. You want to know if I have done it before. The silence stretched, then the commander's voice quieter now. Have you? Ren smiled. It was not a warm expression. 19 years of running contraband through contested space had stripped the warmth from most of her expressions. What remained was calculation. I will answer that question, Commander, after you answer mine. Why are 3 Orsha-class frigates burning fuel to chase one 60-year-old hauler into a zone your own navigation charts refuse to name? She waited. The scanner showed the 3 Vethani ships holding position. They were not gaining. They were not falling back. They were waiting, the way a predator waits at the edge of a river it will not cross. The commander did not answer her question. Instead, he said something that made the skin along her forearms tighten. Kethara, be advised, we have intercepted a signal from the gray zone. It is broadcasting on your frequency. It has been broadcasting since before you entered the buffer. Ren's hands went still on the console. That is not possible. I have been monitoring my own frequencies for 11 hours. There is nothing on them. The signal is encrypted in a format we do not recognize. It is using your ship's registration code as a header. It began broadcasting approximately 14 standard hours ago, before you changed course for the exclusion perimeter. 14 hours, before she had decided to run for the line, before the Vethani had even closed to intercept range. Something in the gray zone had known she was coming before she knew it herself. Ren's fingers moved across the console, pulling up the raw signal data. There it was, a carrier wave buried in the background noise of her own communications array, so precisely matched to the Cathara's emission signature that the ship's filters had classified it as echo. Not interference, not a foreign signal. Echo, as if the Cathara had been talking to itself. She isolated the signal. The encryption was unlike anything in her files, not Dremery, not Vethani, not Korvathi. The patterns were too clean, too regular, like mathematics rendered as sound. She ran it through the Cathara's decryption suite, a patchwork of stolen military algorithms and black market cipher tools she had collected over 2 decades of work that the Tessic Compact called piracy and she called self-employment. The decryption suite failed. Every algorithm, every tool. The signal sat in her buffer like a locked door with no keyhole. She keyed the recorder. Cathara Supplemental, Hour 10. The Vethani report a signal originating from the gray zone, broadcasting on my frequency using my ship's registration header. I have confirmed the signal exists. I cannot decrypt it. The signal predates my decision to approach the exclusion perimeter. I do not have an explanation for this. She paused. Her hands were not shaking. She noted this with the clinical detachment of someone who had learned long ago to observe her own fear from the outside, as if it belonged to someone else. Fuel status 10 hours. Vethani status holding. Decision status unchanged. I am continuing to the line. She killed the mic. The 3rd hour was the worst. The Vethani went quiet. No pings, no warnings, no offers of amnesty. Just 3 ships holding formation at the exact distance they had maintained since the chase began, as if tethered to the Cathara by an invisible cable. Ren tried raising them twice. Static. Not jamming, she knew what jamming sounded like. The heavy, deliberate blanket of noise that enforcement vessels use to isolate a target. This was different. This was the Vethani choosing not to speak. The signal from the gray zone continued to broadcast. It had not changed in frequency, amplitude, or pattern. It pulsed with the regularity of a heartbeat, and Ren found herself timing her breathing to its rhythm without realizing it. She caught herself and forced her respirations into a different cadence. The signal adjusted. Within 30 seconds, it matched her new rhythm. She turned off the speaker. She pulled up the border data on the secondary screen. The exclusion perimeter was a concept, not a wall, an agreed-upon line in the void where the charts went from color to gray, where the navigation beacon stopped transmitting, where the insurance underwriters voided every policy and the search and rescue treaties expired. Cross it and you were not in anyone's territory. Cross it and you were not in anyone's jurisdiction. Cross it and you were not, by the legal and practical consensus of every spacefaring species in the Tessic Reach, anywhere at all. The smuggler in her appreciated the elegance of it. No authority, no law, no tax. The survivor in her understood what it really meant. No rescue. But the Vethani would not cross it. That was the calculation. That was the bet. She needed them to stop chasing her. And the only thing in this galaxy that could make a Vethani enforcement squadron stop was the line they would not cross. After that, she would loop through the gray zone for 12 hours. Her fuel would stretch that far if she killed everything but life support and the drive, and emerge on the far side of the Tessic Reach, outside Vethani jurisdiction, in Dremery neutral space where the Korvathi artifacts in her hold were not contraband but heritage. It was a good plan. It was a rational plan. It depended on one assumption, that the gray zone was empty. She keyed the recorder. Cathara Supplemental, Hour 7. I am inside the exclusion buffer. The line is 90 minutes ahead at current burn. The Vithani have gone silent. The signal from the gray zone continues. I have stopped listening to it. I note for the record that I am aware this plan depends on the assumption that there is nothing in the gray zone that will interfere with my transit. I am aware that this assumption contradicts every piece of anecdotal evidence accumulated over the last 300 years. She stopped, thought about what she was about to say. I am also aware that there is a difference between what the galaxy believes about human space and what is actually there. The galaxy believes in a myth. I believe in fuel and distance. Fuel does not require faith. She killed the mic. The console hummed. The stars thinned further. Ahead, through the viewport, the void was not empty, it was full. The way a forest at night is full, dense with the presence of things that do not need to be seen to be felt. The Cathara crossed the line at hour 5 and 38 minutes of remaining fuel. There was no ceremony, no alarm. The last border marker vanished from the scanner and the charts shifted from their pale navigation blue to the flat gray that cartographers used when they meant, "We do not go here." Wren felt a tightness in her chest that she recognized as adrenaline and dismissed. She checked the scanner. The Vithani ships had stopped. Not slowed, stopped. Dead in space, engines cold as if someone had pulled a switch. She opened the channel. Vithani enforcement, this is the Cathara. I am past the perimeter. I acknowledge that I am outside treaty space and that you have no further obligation to track or pursue. I will re-enter Tessic Reach transit space at coordinates I will transmit in 14 hours. Cathara out. Silence. Then a burst of static and the commander's voice, stripped now of authority and protocol, speaking in the flat, honest tone of a man who had stopped pretending. Cathara, turn around. Negative, Commander, I am committed. You do not understand. The signal, the one on your frequency, we have been monitoring it. It changed when you crossed the line. Wren checked the buffer. The signal was still there, still pulsing, still matched to a rhythm she was no longer listening to. But the commander was right. The encryption had changed. The locked door had opened. She ran the new pattern through the decryption suite. This time it resolved in seconds, not because the encryption was weaker, but because the format was familiar. It was Dremery Standard Commercial, the language of cargo manifests and docking permits, her own language. The signal contained 6 words. We know what you carry. Wren stared at the screen. Her mouth was dry. The 6 words sat there, glowing softly in the amber of the Cathara's display, as unremarkable as a freight invoice. She keyed the recorder. Her voice was steady. She had trained it to be steady. Cathara Supplemental, Hour 5:38. I have crossed the exclusion perimeter. The Vithani have stopped. The signal from the gray zone has decrypted itself using Dremery Standard Commercial format. Content, 6 words. We know what you carry. I do not know who we refers to. I do not know how they are aware of my cargo. I note that the Korvathi cultural artifacts in my hold are of no strategic or military value. They are historical relics, linguistic tablets, ceremonial objects, documents of a species that the Tessic Compact tried to erase. I have been smuggling them for 7 years because the Korvathi cannot do it themselves. She paused. If whoever is broadcasting this message can hear my log, and I suspect they can, I want to be clear. I am not a military vessel. I am not a spy. I am not an invasion force. I am one person in an old ship carrying the memory of a people who are not allowed to have a memory. If that is a crime in this space, tell me now and I will find another way. She killed the mic. The console hummed. The void was very still. The response came 4 minutes later, not on her frequency. On her speaker, the one she had turned off. It activated without her input, the power-on click audible in the silence of the cockpit, and a voice spoke. Not a transmission, a voice, as if someone were standing behind her left shoulder. It spoke Dremery, accented, careful, precise, the way a native speaker of a much older language might speak a younger one, with too much attention to the consonants. You are carrying 11 crates of Korvathi linguistic tablets, 3 crates of ceremonial blades, 2 sealed containers of genetic material, preserved seeds of 4 crop varieties the Tessic compact classified as extinct, and 1 data core containing the complete oral history of the Korvathi northern coastal peoples, recorded in the voices of the last 8 speakers of that dialect. Ren's blood went cold, not because the voice was threatening, because it was accurate. The manifest was perfect, not the falsified manifest she had filed with Dremery Customs, but the real one, the one she had encrypted and stored on a separate drive that was not connected to any system on the Cathara. A drive that had no wireless capability. A drive she kept in a locked box beneath the deck plates. The voice continued. You are not the first to carry something through our space. You are not the first to use our border as a wall against your pursuers. We are aware that this is a function we serve in your region of the galaxy, the darkness that customs agents will not enter. We do not object to this. Fear is a useful currency. Ren found her voice. Who are you? You already know. I know what the galaxy says you are. I do not know what you actually are. A pause. The voice did not breathe. The silence on the other side was absolute, no background hum of a ship, no ambient noise of a station, no trace of the mechanical infrastructure that every species Ren had ever encountered generated simply by existing. We are what was here before. We are what will be here after. The details are not relevant to your situation. My situation. You have 5 hours and 26 minutes of fuel. Your plan is to transit our space in a parabolic arc and emerge at the far edge of the Tessic Reach. This plan will not work. Your fuel calculation assumes a clean void. Our space is not a clean void. There are mass concentration structures, installations, zones of controlled gravity that your instruments cannot detect and that will alter your trajectory. You will not reach the far edge. You will run out of fuel inside our space. Ren's stomach clenched. She pulled up the navigation plot and ran the calculation again with a variable mass distribution. The voice was right. Even a 10% increase in gravitational interference would push her fuel margin past zero. A 20% increase would leave her drifting with 3 hours of life support and no drive. You knew this before I crossed the line, she said. It was not a question. Yes. You let me cross anyway. We did not let you do anything. We observed. Choice is your domain. We do not interfere with choice. But you are talking to me now. Yes. Why? The voice was quiet for a long time. Ren counted the seconds 7, 8, 9, 10. She had learned in 19 years of smuggling that silence was information. People who paused were choosing. People who went silent were deciding how much of the truth you could survive. Because you are carrying something that matters, the voice said. Not to us, to you, to the Korvathi, to the idea that a people should not be erased because a compact found it convenient. We have a particular sensitivity to that idea. Why? Because it was done to us. A very long time ago by species that no longer exist for reasons that no longer matter. We survived. We grew beyond survival. We became something that the galaxy decided it could not understand, and so the galaxy decided we did not exist. We accepted this. Invisibility has its uses. Ren sat in her chair and listened to a species the galaxy had declared mythical explain its own history with the calm precision of someone describing the weather. Her hands had stopped trembling. Her breath had steadied. The paranoia that had been tightening around her chest like a vice for the last 11 hours was loosening, not because the danger had passed, but because the danger had introduced itself, and it was not what she had expected. "You are going to help me," she said. "We are going to give you a choice. Your current trajectory is fatal. We can provide you with a corrected heading, a path through our space that accounts for the mass concentrations your instruments cannot see. The path will take you through zones that are not empty. You will see things. You will not be harmed, but you will see things, and you will not be able to unsee them. At the end of the path, you will emerge at the coordinates you intended, with fuel to spare in Dremery neutral space. Your cargo will be intact. Your ship will be intact. You will be intact. And the price? There is no price. There is a condition. The Korvathi oral history on your data core, the voices of the last 8 speakers. We want a copy." Ren blinked. Of all the demands she had imagined, surrender, silence, service, submission, this was not among them. Why? Because languages die. Because the galaxy is careless with its memories. Because we have been collecting the dying words of vanishing peoples for longer than the Tessic Compact has existed, and the Korvathi Northern Coastal dialect is one we do not have. You collect languages. We collect everything that the galaxy throws away. Languages, seeds, songs, the names of stars that the cartographers erased. The mathematics of species that were destroyed before they could publish. The recipes of peoples who were absorbed. We are the archive the galaxy does not know it has. Ren sat in the silence of her cockpit and considered the math. 5 hours of fuel. An impossible trajectory. 3 Vethani frigates behind her that would resume pursuit the moment she tried to go back. And ahead of her, the species the galaxy called a myth, asking for a copy of a dead language in exchange for safe passage through the darkness. She keyed the recorder. "Cathara Supplemental, Hour 512. I am in contact with I do not have a designation, a presence inside the gray zone. They have offered corrected navigation in exchange for a copy of the Korvathi Oral History Data Core. I am going to accept. I note for the record that I do not fully understand what is happening. I note that understanding is not required for survival." She killed the mic. "I accept your condition. How do I transmit the data?" "You do not need to transmit. We already have access to the drive. We have had access since your ship crossed the line. We are asking permission because it matters to us that it is given." Ren absorbed this. They had access to a disconnected drive in a locked box under her deck plates. They were asking permission because it mattered to them. She filed both facts in the part of her mind that processed things she would think about later, if there was a later. "Permission granted. Thank you. Your corrected heading is loading to your navigation console now." She looked at the screen. The gray chart had changed. A thread of pale blue light curved through the void, a path, precise and narrow, winding between mass concentrations that her instruments had not known were there. The concentrations were enormous. Some of them were larger than planets. The path threaded between them like a river between mountains, and the mountains were things the galaxy had decided not to see. She engaged the corrected heading. The Cathara adjusted, its old frame groaning as the drive shifted vector. Through the viewport, the void was no longer featureless. Shapes moved at the edge of perception, not ships, not stations, not anything she had a word for. Structures of light and matter that seemed to exist in more dimensions than she could process. Their surfaces rippling with patterns that her eyes could follow, but her mind could not hold. She keyed the recorder. Her voice was quiet now, not from fear, but from something else, a stillness that she had not felt in 19 years of running. "Cathara Supplemental, Hour 441. I am transiting the gray zone on a corrected heading provided by the local presence. I can see I do not have the vocabulary. The zone is not empty. It is the opposite of empty. It is full of things I cannot describe. I am not frightened. I note this because it surprises me." She killed the mic. The Cathara flew on. The transit took 3 hours and 17 minutes. During that time, Ren saw things that she would spend the rest of her life trying to describe and failing. She saw a structure that looked like a city built on the inside of a sphere, its lights arranged in patterns that she recognized, after 20 minutes of staring, as star charts, not the Tessic Reach charts she knew, but charts of something larger, something that included galaxies she had never heard of as minor suburbs. She saw what might have been ships, except they were the size of moons, and they moved with the slow deliberation of creatures that had nowhere to go because they had already been everywhere. She saw a field of objects that pulsed with light, thousands of them, arranged in rows that stretched beyond her scanner range, and when she asked the voice what they were, the voice said, "Seeds," and did not elaborate. She saw a dark place, a gap in the structures where no light reached, where her instruments registered nothing at all, absolute zero on every sensor, and the voice said, without being asked, "That is where we keep the names of the species that tried to erase us. We do not visit it, but we do not delete it. Memory is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be." She did not ask any more questions after that. At hour 2 and 21 minutes of remaining fuel, the corrected heading curved upward, a relative term in void space, but her instruments registered it as a steep climb relative to the galactic plane, and the structures fell away behind her. Ahead, the stars returned. Not the thin, sparse stars of the buffer zone, but the full dense field of the Tessic Reach, burning in their familiar colors, and among them the navigation beacons of Dremery neutral space, pulsing their routine identification codes as if nothing in the universe had changed. The gray on her charts dissolved. Color returned. She was past the line on the other side, and the Vithani were 17 hours behind her, in a jurisdiction they would have to petition 3 governments to enter. She checked her fuel. 2 hours and 14 minutes remaining, more than enough to reach the Dremery beacon at OSC 4 and dock. She checked her cargo. Intact, every crate, every seal, every container exactly as she had loaded them on Kesavar. She checked the data core. The Korvathi oral history was still there, complete, unaltered, and beside it on the same disconnected drive in the same locked box, a new file. She opened it. It was a language, not Korvathi, not Dremery, not any language she recognized. The file header identified it as Pre-Compact Terran Northern Coastal Dialect Extinct, and contained 12 hours of audio recordings, linguistic analysis, and a pronunciation guide. They had given her their own dying language, a human language, one that had been dead by the file's metadata for over 9,000 years. She sat in her chair for a long time, listening to the hum of her ship, looking at the stars she knew. Then she keyed the recorder for the last time. Cathara Final Supplemental, Transit Complete, I am in Dremery Neutral Space. Fuel, 2 hours 14. Cargo, intact. Data core, intact, with an addition I did not request and do not fully understand. The Korvathi artifacts will reach their destination. The compact will not know. She paused. The words she wanted to say were simple, but they carried a weight she was not used to carrying. I have been a smuggler for 19 years. I have carried contraband through every contested corridor in the Tessic Reach. I have never not once encountered a border that let me through because it decided I deserved to pass. Borders are walls. They keep things in or out. They do not judge. Another pause. The hum of the Cathara filled the cockpit, steady and old and familiar. This one judged. It looked at what I was carrying, and it decided that the memory of a dying people was worth a course correction. I do not know what to do with that. I do not know what it means about the species the galaxy has decided does not exist. She looked at the viewport. The stars were bright. The Dremery beacon at OSC 4 pulsed green in the distance, welcoming and ordinary and blind to everything she had seen. I know what I will do with the language they gave me. I will add it to the cargo. I will deliver it with the Korvathi tablets and the seeds and the oral history. I will put it in the hands of people who understand that a dead language is not dead until the last person who cares about it decides to stop listening. She killed the mic. The recorder light went dark. Ren Vasek sat in the cockpit of the Cathara and pointed her ship toward the beacon. Behind her, the gray zone closed like a door that had never been open. The charts returned to their flat, featureless nothing. The border markers resumed their warnings. The galaxy went on pretending that the space she had just flown through was empty, and the species she had just spoken to did not exist, and the archive that held the memory of every discarded civilization was a myth told by pilots who had been alone too long. She did not correct anyone. She did not file a report. She did not update her charts. She flew on, carrying one more language than she had started with, toward a port where no one would ask where she had been, because the answer was a place that did not exist, and the proof was a voice that the galaxy had chosen not to hear. The Vethani commander filed his own report that night. It read in its entirety: pursuit terminated at the exclusion perimeter. Target vessel entered the gray zone. No recovery attempted. No further action recommended. He did not mention the signal. He did not mention the 6 words. He did not mention the fact that his 3 frigates, the most advanced intercept vessels in the Vethani fleet, had lost power to every system simultaneously the moment the Cathara crossed the line, and that power had returned only after the smuggler was gone. Some things the commander understood were not meant for reports. They were meant for silence. And the silence in this part of the galaxy had been speaking for a very long time.